Hello, World of Tank Blitzers. It's a Littlefinger, and I'm doing an add-on to my full tank review on the Object 252U that I did earlier this year back in February. The reason for that is, yes, it is back in stores for 8,500 gold. And in my review, I said that it was the best of the Tier 8 heavies that come from the pike nose Soviet slash Chinese mold, because there are a lot of them. And what I wanted to do first was just go through the garage here and do a quick comparison of the two and discuss the armor profile of these tanks. We'll get into Armor Inspector here in a second, but what I want you to notice is that the pike nose is a little bit higher on the 252U. The positive to that is that your hull is going to be at a much greater angle, making your effective armor really, really good and strong on the upper part of the hull, but gives you a little bit bigger and also a little bit easier area to pen on the front, on the lower part of the hull. So we compare that to the IS-5 here. You can see that point's much lower. This is a little flatter, and you've got a smaller area down here. But with that being said, this area then becomes much more pennable by other tanks. Also, if we notice here on the side, the profile, look how tall the IS-5 sits and how tall the turret is. This is a much lower profile tank, and you've got some really rounded curves there on the side of the turret, which makes this very difficult to pen. And we know that these tanks all have spaced armor in this area, and that for the most part the hull comes inwards here. So when we're shooting this way from the side, not only do we have to go through the spaced armor, but we also have to go through the sloped armor on the inside of the tank. So we want to be shooting it at or close to the track level here. And with the Object 252 having these sharper lines and angles, it just makes this area a little bit smaller and more difficult to pen. Also, you look at the back side, it is much flatter back here. So again, even going to get bounces off the back of this tank. And there are quite a few of these tanks. We look at the WZ-110, which is the Chinese tank. We've got the IS-3D, which is another pike nose. IS-6 doesn't really fall into the pike nose category, but obviously the normal tech tree variant of the IS-3 does. So there's quite a lot of these very similar tank types, either with the slanted front or the pike nose. But to me, for the pike nose variant, the Object 252U is the strongest of them. So using Armor Inspector, we can illustrate this point a little bit better. You can see the green. We're getting shot by an IS-3 straight on. Our hatches and lower part of the hull are certainly the most pennable. But if you look at this, you're at 218 effective armor, but look at some of these numbers on the upper part of the hull, up close to 500, 480 across the board. And then when we start getting into the turret, we're well into the 500s. And of course, then our weakest spot up here are going to be both of these hatches. But what I want to do here is, let's go back to pen and pull up the IS-5 here. Now look, you can see we have a chance, 28% chance of getting penned in the front of the hull by an IS-3. So that just goes to show you the additional, how this part of the hull being a little bit more straight up and down provides us a little bit less effective armor. And one of the things I want to point out also is, let's say the tank doesn't do great side scraping because of the pike nose. Because if you're sitting on, let's say, a building, and you're coming out like this, you can see the front of the tank is green. But you can play a pretty good peek-a-boom if you've got your tank, say, behind a building and you're coming back out at a little bit more of an angle. Look at this on the IS-5. All of this is green, but let's go back and pull up the 252U. We have now made our front plate impenetrable and a 26% chance of being shot in the hull. So this is why I think with the way the configuration of the armor and where the armor lies is much more effective in the 252U. So you could drive forward, take your shot. If you're timing everything perfectly, you've waited for everyone else to take their shots, you take yours and you back behind cover. And if your timing's not great, then you're basically only exposing maybe the wheel and the front part of the pike nose there. And just so I can point out a few other little differences, when we're using blitzstars.com, we've got most of these pike nose tanks, including the IS-6, pulled up. Just for comparison purposes, we are at the bottom with our 1795 in damage per minute. So to me, that is a drawback. And if you look at our shell velocity at 1000, it doesn't really even stand up to some of these other ones that are using APCR as their premium. However, they are using heat as their premium, whereas the 252U has APCR. So you get 12,050 for your velocity, whereas the IS-5, when you need the pen the most, you've got the worst shell velocity. So I don't like the mechanics of heat as much as APCR. I would much rather have that as my premium ammunition. So I think that is an advantage to the 252U. The only other tank that does that is the straight up IS-3. Pen numbers are going to be the same across the board. The one difference, because you've got a little bit longer of a reload time, you do 420 average damage versus 400 and all of these other ones. And you can see here 14-second reload versus 12.68, 13 seconds, and the other ones. Not a lot of difference in the aim time. Going to be right around 3 seconds, and a high 0.39 dispersion, which obviously is not good, which is why you want to be up close and personal in these tanks, face-hugging other tanks so that they can't see that lower plate. You've got 6 degrees of gun depression, which is good, not great. The IS-5 is limited to only 5. The Defender is the best with 7. The speed, a little bit of a downside to the 252U at only 35 kilometers per hour, so you're going to lose out a little bit in your mobility there. Interestingly enough, and I think this is because you have a lower profile than these other tanks, you do have a better camo rating when moving. And then, we'd go down and look at credit coefficients. Nice 170. But here we are, 250 on the turret armor. None of these other tanks even come close. 230 on the WZ-111. 150 on the sides. So this is where the tank really shines, in the turret armor. So if you can get this thing hull down or face hugging other tanks, even if you're turning your turret, many tanks are going to be bouncing the side of your turret. Hull armor is the strongest, and like I said, it is also the steepest, so you're going to have super good effective armor. And then I think the final statistic is, look at the average win rate for the BlitzStars data over the last 90 days, 60% win rate. That is far and away better than any of these other pike nose tanks. So I think that's going to show you that, yeah, statistically wise, people can say, oh, it's expensive, whatnot. Obviously, for the gold value, the IS-5 at 1500 gold is a great tank. But to me, when you're talking the best pike nose heavy tank, it is the 252U. Alright guys, so I got 2 quick games here. First one on Himmelsdorf as bottom tier. One of my least favorite maps in the game. It's, in my opinion, very one-dimensional. Not a lot of flexibility in where the fighting goes on. So anyway, my preference would have been to go to the rails. I feel more comfortable there, kind of more of a peek-a-boom style than a hold down style on the heavy side, and especially with our team. But the majority of them are headed to the right, so that is what I'm going to do and follow them. And, I think that is a nice segue into this tank. Just because I think that it is the best pike-nosed Soviet Chinese heavy tank does not mean that it's going to carry every single game. Um, Obviously, 7-on-7. This game as a whole is very team dependent, so you do need a team. And part of the reason I put this battle in is obviously there's another 252U on the other side. You can see there the difference between how much red was on the upper hull turret and the lower hull underneath the pike nose. Now we have a KPF right in front of me, and that is the Russian accuracy. That first shot was more luck than anything. But what I wanted to do was just pause the video for a second and turn around and show you where that shot hit. Right there on the little ledge of the hatch. That is basically the only place that can be penned. So I would say kudos to the KPF there. That was a very good shot. I'm not sure how many times out of 10 he could hit that, especially with me rocking back and forth. But again, back to the 252U, there's your accuracy. And I realize now after 3 shots that I am not being effective in this position, so I'm going to move on up. Now, this is where I make probably my biggest mistake. I probably should have just backed up onto the other channel there and taken a more defensive position away from the KPF that is pushing around. And bad decision here, number 2, to try to shoot the side cheek of the lava. But this is part of the reason I put it in too. We've got a 152, 158 millimeter gun pointing at us right here. And look at that. Those strange Russian bounces in this 252U. And so again, I realize I'm in the thick of things. I need to get out of here. That was the ISU that just shot us in the butt. But again, if you don't come out right, you can see that is pennable underneath. And this is what it's going to look like if you're face hugging a 252U. Just look at all that red. You can't even see the hatch because we're a little bit too low. I do know I can back up and get him in the side. But in the process, our team, as you can see, has completely disappeared. So we really didn't put forth a great game at all. We did what we could in the short amount of time that we were alive. 2,000 damage, 1,200 blocked. And that's a number you're going to see consistent. You are going to see a pretty high blocked number if you know how to hide that lower plate. And that's going to be the key to this next video. Alright, so this is Falls Creek, and we are top tier, and the thing you have to think about is where can you get on this map that's going to hide that lower plate, right? There's a few kind of hold down places to the right here, but we've got a couple TDs that I'm assuming are going to want to take those spots. So I'm going to be aggressive and jump straight on down into the little low spot by the bridge here, which gives me some opportunities to peekaboo. And we start the game out with an extremely lucky shot there on the Bulldog, and he is just in a bad situation right now. And that's been the theme of the day for me. 3 battles, 3 Bulldogs, 3 zeros, and I think we have a Bulldog that does 0 on our team, and it happened in another game on my team as well. SP1C, we can shoot HE into the side of him. He does have some good gun depression, was able to get that shot down. I'm not sure exactly where that hit, but the reason I wanted to be here obviously was I can hide most of the lower part of my tank. However, I have to be very particular at when I pull out, because I have all of these guns looking at me. And the idea here is that these guys are going to be ready to shoot me, and I've got tanks behind me that are going to do damage, and I'm not seeing anyone doing any damage. I've shown them my lower plate, and I'm going to take 3 shots for that. And I decided that is not worth it. I can't stay up there without as much support behind me as I thought I had. And so I'm going to decide, you know what, I'm going to push around. We can get hold down on that ridge line there, but SP1C is going to try to make a run for it before I can get over the ridge line. And then I see the defender coming at me, so I'm like, I better get back over the ridge line. Knowing I'm going to take 1 shot to his, I can get back across here, this ridge line, and now I'm going to use this to be hold down and try to just stay in his face, not give him anything to shoot, and basically just push him back on the other side of the hill there. Knowing I am a 1 shot, you know, I'm just trying to hide that lower plate angle, and there we go, we get a bounce off of the side. And I guess those track shots, we just haven't blocked any damage yet. Get the kill shot in here, and again, while I'm going to crest over the hill, here come the RHM. So my plan to move up didn't really work, but again here, we're just going to let this guy's aggressiveness get the better of him. He's going to give us a place to shoot. 535 HE, and look at that. Now we've blocked 640. So we didn't block a lot this game, but we did enough. Yeah, RHM gets taken out there by the greedy Carnarvon. Because as I come back up the hill here, I forgot that I left it on HE. Got a shot into, potential shot into the side turret of the T-29, but I have to switch back to AP. And by the time I take my shot, Carnivore there is in the way. So we finished with 4,600 damage, 1,000 blocked, and level 1, 108,000 credits. Yeah, and the Spartan. Surviving a ricochet, non-penetrating with only 10% of your life remaining. So that right there exemplifies this tank. You're going to get some crazy bounces that you don't expect, but it's very difficult to hide that lower plate. So if you can focus on that, you're going to do really well in this tank. And it's obviously a tank that you want to be in the face of the enemy up close, so you don't have to worry about the dispersion, and you can use the upper half of your tank and the tremendous armor that it provides. So with that, guys, have fun out there. Stay safe, get educated, not fingered. Littlefinger out.